Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special Speaking Moistly. With me today is John Carpay. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing okay. This Charlie Kirk thing. Holy smoke.
Oh, it's too sad.
Yesterday afternoon, like 2:30, whatever time, I try and do blocks of work, and I just finished kind of a block of work, and I opened I was going to have a little 5 minute break, and that 5 minute break lasted the whole rest of the night. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Oh,
And the reaction of the left has been jaw dropping. I can't believe some of the takes I've seen and heard. The I don't know how the right responds to this, because it seems like the cornerstone of our legal system, the cornerstone of our system, is that we use speech when disagreements happen and we don't use violence. And this seems to be, we don't care about open debate. We don't, and that was Charlie Kirk's thing, right? Open debate. And the left is saying with this assassination, and it was an assassination, that we don't care about open debate. We'll just shoot you if you say things we don't like. What do you think?
that's part of fascism. And in my book, Corrupted by Fear, I go through the characteristics of fascism. And one of them is that people are so convinced of the truth of their own belief, or the
Yes.
correctness of their own belief. And it's okay. It's okay. Obviously, we are convinced of the correctness of our own beliefs, right? If you have an opinion on something, it's because you believe that opinion is better than other opinions. You believe it's correct. That's okay, right? If you're, for free trade or against free trade, or you want higher taxes, lower taxes, whatever your opinion is, we believe that our own opinion is the best one. That's okay. But the fascists and National Socialists, communists, whatever, these days it's the woke folk.
Mm-hmm.
They are so convinced of the correctness of their own view that they're willing to silence others. So you have censorship. Assassination is an extreme form of censorship. It's much more evil. It's much worse. You could be banned from speaking at a particular university. That's a very bad thing. If it's a taxpayer-funded university, they should be for free speech.
Yep.
But ultimately, you could still speak off. So I'm not condoning that. It is bad, but you could go and speak elsewhere, and you continue to live and be a father and a husband and so on. But it's cold-blooded murder.
Mm-hmm.
It's an assassination, and the most appalling thing. One example is University of Toronto professor Dr. Ruth Marshall, and warning for parents. I'm going to use some very foul language in quoting exactly what Dr. Ruth Marshall of the University of Toronto said about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Quote, "Shooting is honestly too good for so many of you fascist cunts."
Hmm.
End of quote.
So what kind of
So
education are those kids getting? Sorry, carry on.
yeah, it's just appalling, and a complaint has been filed against her, and we'll see what the university does with that. No, I am free speech advocate, so I don't think that the government should put her in jail. Um, how the university chooses to deal with her, the academic freedom is about the ideas being permitted. The idea was, if you're a professor at a university, you don't get fired because you advocate for some crazy idea, like
Mm-hmm.
the first doctor to say that doctors should wash their hands before delivering babies. It wasn't a university professor, right? But you get these crazy ideas. The world is round. Women should have the right to vote. At the time they're seen as revolutionary. So the idea behind tenure, where university profs can say what they want, and they can do their research and come out with radical, controversial, unpopular research, it's to protect ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's necessarily out of line for, and it's up to the University of Toronto ultimately. I don't think it's necessarily out of line for the university to reprimand a prof for celebrating the violence. Shooting is honestly too good for so many of you fascist CUNTS. So yeah, to use that kind of language, but the attitude behind it is frightening. This is a woman who presumably she's not pro-life. She doesn't believe in responsible firearms ownership. She probably voted for or prefers Kamala Harris over Trump,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. So she's probably a woman of the left. But to have that kind, shooting is honestly too good for so many of you. Wow. Like, this is not somebody that really understands a dialogue and debate, and she's got this fascist attitude that you're entitled to shut up your opponents.
Right. Well, and it's been kind of a push. Like, we've seen actors, the guy who played not the detective, the police chief in Stranger Things, he was saying, you got to punch a Nazi, you got to punch those guys right in the face. Biden said, I'm going to punch Trump in the face because he's a Nazi, all of this stuff. And so, like, we've gone from that, from in the 2020s and before 2020, during the 2020 election, all of that rhetoric of we've got to go out and be violent against these people. And now somebody is going out and being violent against these people. Charlie Kirk is one example, but there are other examples. And the right is being blamed for violence while the left is committing the violence. And it seems like we're in a situation where ideologues are protecting their ideology over people who would object, and using censorship to make sure their ideology, which doesn't stand up to the rigor of debate, they fail to debate their point. They lose those debates. And so instead of going into a debate they know they're going to lose, they vilify their opponent. They lie about their opponent. They smear their opponent. They smear, as your example, tenured professors who maybe should be pushing the envelope are actually just ideologues who are protected. And they're put in those protected positions because the university itself is an asset to an ideology. And one example is one of our ministers, who was it? I can't remember which it was. In the University of Waterloo, opened the Confucius Center. University of Waterloo, and it's a Chinese education Confucius Center, 2006. And so there's this capture of the institution that is pushing for this communist ideology. And then you've got downstream from the institution who's protecting this communist ideology, a professor who's saying, a University of Toronto professor who's saying, F that guy who got assassinated, you fascists deserve it. And it's interesting because I think she's the one who's the fascist. I think she's the one who's ideologically captured and not seeing reality for what it is. And I don't know how to fight it, because if you say, hey, like, you lunatics are crazy, that man can't be a woman, or you lunatics are crazy, shooting somebody you disagree with is not the way to win an argument, and then they shoot you and you lose, like, right? So
but these people don't want arguments. They don't want debates.
They'd rather shoot you.
They want their ideology. And Canadians are very good at seeing past colors to recognize that a car is a car. So, for example, I drive a 2018 Toyota Yaris, small four-door car. Mine is white. They are available in other colors, blue and red and some others, not yellow, my favorite. Anyway, when Canadians look at cars with different colors, they see that it's not a red, but it's a red car. Right? They don't say, well, that's a blue, that's a yellow, that's a white. It's no, that's a red car, a blue car, a yellow car, a white car. And yet with ideology, we got this like repressive, anti-freedom, disrespect for human rights, disrespect for the dignity of the individual, tyranny, take away individual rights and freedoms. That's the core. That's like the car. But then you've got a layer on top of it, and the layer could be National Socialist, it could be theocrats, like we've got these theocrat, fundamentalist Shiite Muslims in power in Iran since 1979. You've got Sunni Muslims, theocracy in Saudi Arabia. You can get, if you convert away from Islam to Christianity or Islam to atheism, you can be sentenced to death and executed. You can be flogged for criticizing Islam. So these are theocracies. You've got the National Socialists who are in power in Germany. You've got fascists in power in numerous countries, Portugal, Spain, Italy, etc. And sadly, so people don't get fooled with coat of paint on a car. They say, well, it's still a car. Yeah, it might be a yellow car, it might be a blue car, it might be a green car, but it's a car. Mm-hmm. With tyranny, we get deluded, we get fooled into not seeing through it. That the outer coating could be communist, it could be woke, it could be equity, diversity, inclusion. Right, it could be anything, but people get fooled by that, and they say, "Well, that's not tyranny and repression; it's communism. It's the workers' paradise." Or, that's not tyranny and repression; it's equity, diversity, inclusion.
Interesting. So you're saying that people just don't recognize the hijacking of our government vehicle to continue that, like they view
people don't recognize the reality of tyranny because they're mesmerized by the outer coating.
Okay.
Right? So they're mesmerized. So they like, because they like the woke theocracy.
Yeah. They like
the woke. They like the theocracy. They like whatever. They like the exterior coating.
Okay. That's sorry. I just want to, sometimes my understanding mirrors my audience's understanding. And I feel like there's no stupid questions. I just want to reiterate what you're saying. So like in a theocracy where somebody understands that if I criticize Islam, I'm going to go to jail, but I like Islam. Why would I criticize Islam? There's nothing bad about Islam, so I like it, and so I'm not going to criticize it, so it's fine. And so in the same way, somebody who adheres to a woke ideology says, well, like if I said that man can't be a woman, they'd be very upset with me. But why would I say that? Of course that man can be a woman. I love this ideology. This ideology is wonderful. So in that way, they almost inhabit the ideology and they don't even see it. They can say, well, we're still a liberal democracy. You just can't pray about illegal things. We're still a liberal democracy. You just can't say that man can't be a woman, right? Like obviously everything else is okay, but the things that are illegal, you can't say them. And it's like, well, why would saying this man can't be a woman? That's biologically correct. There's nothing illegal about that. Why would that be a triggering thing? And then they just get mad at you. And it's like, so yeah, I mean, that theocracy comparison is something that I hadn't considered before, but I think it fits quite well. Like, yeah, I think that so that indicates to me that this is a cult or religion almost. You know what I mean? Like, cult is almost better.
Ideology is a form of religion. Well, it's a sick religion that is detached from the willingness to pursue truth. I mean, somebody could say, hey, John, you have an ideology, you have a classical liberal ideology. And if we mean ideology by a set of beliefs, I mean, yes, absolutely. I've got a set of beliefs, about the inherent worth and infinite value of every individual, and that the governments should respect the fundamental rights and freedoms of every individual, and that those freedoms include the freedoms of speech, religion, conscience. The government should be our servant, not our master, and that we should not be subjected to tyranny and human rights violations, and that a free society is better than an oppressive, repressive regime, etc. So I have an ideology in the sense of having a belief system where, and you can have a religion of sorts as well, where the problem comes in for ideology or religion is if there's not an authentic love for truth, and there's well, my ideology says such and such, so even when reality is denying it, I'm just going to disregard the reality, and it's going to be, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
Yeah. Well, and we see that. We see that kind of fight through like the ideology pushing forward in schools, despite parents pushing back. Like you've got woke teachers and you've got school boards who say you can't teach this stuff in the class in Florida. And then teachers going on TikTok and whatever saying, oh, well, I'm going to continue doing this anyway. And so it's an interesting pickle that we're in, because on one side, you want to protect the ideas and the formation of new ideas, even if they disrupt the status quo, because it may be way better to do the new idea than the ingrained idea. But at the same time, I don't know how you balance that need for freedom with the very real danger of people hijacking that freedom in order to install an ideology. And I think that that's what's happened in Canada and in the West, indeed, more broadly. 20 years of unending, and more, 30 years of unending and well-planned kind of step-by-step to where we are now, right? Like, I don't think the people in the 90s would accept the narrative of men can just be women. I think that there would be hell to pay politically for that. But they stepped us and they targeted kids and they walked us to where we are now in the West. And so I don't know how to balance that properly. I don't know how to balance the need for free speech and protecting new ideas against with the need to protect our society and culture from an ideology that wants to destroy it and has already infiltrated most of our institutions.
I think the solution is you don't have a one-size-fits-all elementary schools, high schools, healthcare system. It's the government takeover that's the problem.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Governments. A lot of politicians would have you believe that governments invented education and governments invented healthcare, and until we had government-funded, government-run, government-controlled education, everybody was just languishing in a state of complete ignorance, and people were dying on the streets, etc. Completely false.
Yep.
We've had medicine's been around for thousands of years. We've got different streams of it, the Western and various Oriental streams, and whatever. Mm-hmm. Medicine's been around. Healthcare's been around for thousands of years. But government took it over in the 60s and began to run it and control it. And contrary to Canada's constitution, actually, the federal government has no business in healthcare. Mm-hmm. Our constitution says that healthcare is the exclusive jurisdiction of the provinces. Mm-hmm. And the reason that our constitution was created that way was to so the provinces could learn from each other. So maybe Alberta experimented with a particular thing and it had very poor outcomes. It went sideways. Other provinces look at that, they take note. Right, there would be actually different healthcare systems. Yep. And people would look at, why does province A have much shorter waiting lists than province B? Why is that? What are they doing better?
Yep.
And so with education, nobody really complained. In the 1960s, society was more homogenous. It was very much Christian, at least at the nominal level. I don't want to say that people, it'd be very hard to evaluate to what extent were people true believers and truly practicing the faith. I mean, that would be difficult to evaluate, but at least on a superficial level. I mean, I'm 58 years old, which I think is not that old. And I remember that we said the Our Father in a regular, normal public school. Mm-hmm. Where I grew up in British Columbia. We said the Our Father at 9 a.m. at the beginning of class. So not a Christian school, just a public school.
So my grade 2 year, I think it was grade 2. Yes, it was grade 2, 100% grade 2. My grade 2 teacher realized that I didn't know the Lord's Prayer, and that was enough to get a phone call home saying, like, do you guys need help? Like, what's wrong? Why doesn't Mark know the Lord's Prayer? And then they took it out later that year. And I was like, and because they used to ask kids to come up, and the teacher would stand, her name was Miss Anderson, and I was best friends with her son. Anyway, regardless, the teacher would stand at the front of the class, and they'd ask 2 students to come up and stand beside them, and everybody was supposed to like bow your head and say the Lord's Prayer. But I never bowed my head, I never closed my eyes, and I never said the Lord's Prayer because I didn't know it. And she was like, what is wrong with you, buddy? Like, do you not know? I was like, no, I have no idea. And so it wasn't, I don't know why, it wasn't something that was central in my household or something like that. I'm not sure what it was, but yeah, they took it out in my grade 2 year. And I thought then relief because I didn't know it. And now I think, man, what a terrible thing to do to kids. I think religion.
Terrible to have them say it, or terrible? No,
terrible to not teach it. Yeah, terrible to not inform kids and just give them the basic knowledge.
I mean, there were strong arguments for removing it insofar as the Jewish children and Jehovah's Witness children of atheists and agnostics it was a form of compelled speech. Sure. I could see if I was Jewish, I might, and some Jews wouldn't care. They'd just say, yeah, whatever, right? But I could see from a Jewish perspective, you don't want your kid to say the Lord's Prayer if you don't recognize Jesus as being the Messiah or the Lord and the whole thing. And it's a Christian prayer and it's not Jewish and like whatever. So, but getting back to that point about like how do we respect freedom of expression and reconcile that with our institutions? Mm-hmm. The problem is that we've got a one-size-fits-all public school system, and so we have these unnecessary battles where you've got, the woke people want, Johnny at age 5 should be practicing putting a condom on a banana because that's really important for 5-year-olds to learn.
Yeah.
And,
Nope.
Johnny should be told that he might not be a boy and he could be a girl. And if he wants to become a girl, he can become a girl, etc. Now, there's very few parents that actually want that.
Yeah.
But if it's a one-size-fits-all school system and it's top-down controlled, now you've got a problem, and you've got all these. We've got to spend so much time and effort and energy on fighting these battles in school board elections, provincial elections. If you had authentic school choice, where the government said there's going to be the funding is going to follow the choice of the parents. Parents can send their kids to the school of their choice, and we're not going to have this top-down control. What you'd find in let's say a large area of Toronto, 3 million or 4 or 5 million, depending on where you draw the line, but you've got this huge area. You would have maybe 1% of the schools, or maybe I'm wrong, maybe 5 or 10% of the schools would be these woke progressive whatever, and there's some parents who want to send their kids to that kind of a school where the kids, they get their story time is done by a drag queen, and there's rainbow flags everywhere. And maybe there's 1%.
I don't know that I would push back on that. I don't know that would be popular. There may be a subcategory of kids, and I don't know how big that subcategory is. I would push back and say I don't think that there would be a subcategory enough to create an entire school of classes like that. You know what I'm saying? Like it seems
You're
like a
saying
very
less than 1%.
I think it's a very niche ideology, and I think I think the kids are being targeted, and I think like by the time you get to high school, the kids have gotten wise to it, unless they're part and parcel of the elite class. You know what I mean? Because there's an elite class within that structure, within that school board structure, and kids can be onboarded into that. Like you're an important whatever student council, whatever it is, right? They can be onboarded into the woke ideology. But I think that parents, by and large, wouldn't tolerate that. And if I'm in charge of my kid, or if there's a mom and dad who are in charge of their kid, they're going to try and get the best quote education they can.
Okay, and that's my whole point, is that you would have the funding follows student, so the parents decide. So let's say we're in it doesn't have to be Toronto, but we're in London, Ontario, right? A medium large city, whatever. There's enough people there, and there's enough kids there that you would have let's say 100 schools, and some of them would be religious, non-religious. You would have some very like classical academy where it's non-religious, but they wear uniforms and they're going to study all the great books of Western civilization. You would have some schools very, very heavily fixated on sports. It would still do academics, but this is really the sports school, where we go all out for that. Others would have a big musical focus. And so you have all these different kinds of schools. And I don't really care whether it's 1% or 10% or 1/10 of 1% of the parents who want to send their kids to this equity, diversity, inclusion, woke, progressive, and a school full of rainbow flags and story time read by a drag queen, right? It doesn't matter whether they're 1% or 10% or 5% or 0%. If they want that kind of school for their kids, I respect. Part of freedom is you can make choices that are wrong or that other people perceive to be wrong, right? So it's like religious freedom, right? You might think that some religions are stupid or all religions are stupid, but in a free society, if somebody else wants to practice a particular religion, they can go ahead and do that. It's their life. You don't own them.
Sure.
And so parents, they should be able to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. That's enshrined in Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is not legally binding in Canada, but it is a good statement of principles. It was created right after World War II, where we saw governments using the school system to indoctrinate kids. Yeah. And of course that continued onwards after 1945.
It never ended. It never ended.
So there, in a nutshell, there's my answer to, how do we reconcile freedom of expression with institutions? If you have the money follow the parents' choice, and you have different kinds of schools, we don't need to have these aggressive school board elections to get our people in there to protect our kids, whatever, right?
Yeah,
Parents will choose the kind of schools that they want for their kids, and there's just no reason to not move ahead on that.
Well, I agree. It seems like the school boards don't want to because it loses them power. And
it's a power trip. It's like,
a power trip, right?
I've got the power and I want to impose my ideology on everybody else because I'm right. And it's like no, you've got strong opinions, and you have every right as a parent to raise up your children according to your convictions, religious, non-religious, quasi-religions, whatever. You raise up your kids. You have that responsibility, which means you also have the right to determine the contents of their education. But it's the government that should respect the right of parents. Now, because we're not the 1960s, where this gets back to, we were 99% Christian, at least nominally. Again, I don't, not getting into how fervently people actually believe Christian doctrines or not, but on the surface, superficially, it was 99% Christian. So it was pretty straightforward. You had your Catholic schools, and then you had your Protestant schools, because the public schools were Protestant religious schools.
I was going to say to address that as well. Freedom of religion was not necessarily saying come here and celebrate and worship Hinduism, come here and worship Islamism, come here and worship other Buddhism. It was to normalize between Lutheranism, Protestant. Orangeville is named Orangeville for a reason. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't
very Protestant.
Yeah. It wasn't like. We're Orangeville, so anybody who wanted, like Lutherans, come live here. There was a reason it was named Orangeville, right? Like they wanted homogenous society and
homogeneity.
So,
people like that. Birds of a feather flock together, and it's a natural of human nature to want to be together with your own kind.
So it's super weird that our government,
religion, culture, language, other things.
So why would the government weaponize immigration against the citizens who want a homogeneous society? I don't understand. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You got the 1960s, and then the government realizes in 1980 that they can import basically an 18-year-old tax-paying citizen, and they're monetarily incentivized to do that. And then by 1987, they're like, hey, you know what? Multiculturalism is the thing. And I think that it causes.
Well, that was started under Trudeau in 1970.
It was, yeah, 1970. Yeah, this is 1960s, but it was enshrined in law in the House of Commons 1987 under Mulroney, right? So. But it's incredible. And so like, I talk about education a lot, and I think that education is, if somebody waved a magic wand right now and I was the premier of Ontario, I would also be the education minister, and I would damn well fix that issue. I would solve the problem, and a cornerstone to it would be having the money.
Would you do some sort of a voucher system where parents can choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children?
100, absolutely.
And just get rid of the one size fits all.
Yeah. That's
what the problem is. If you've got a one size fits all, you're going to have a lot of unhappy people.
Yes.
Because and why shouldn't they be unhappy? I mean, if the government is taking your tax dollars and providing, in exchange for your tax dollars, they're giving you this education system, but it's hostile to what you're trying to teach your kids at home, why shouldn't you be upset?
Right.
But you can fix that with just allowing for different kinds of schools. Now, that model might not work that well in if you're in a small town of 10,000 people and there's no other towns for hundreds of kilometers around. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. That would be a different situation. That'd be a whole other topic. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think there'd be a majority.
A city with 50,000 people or 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 people, there's enough people there that you can have different kinds of schools. Yeah. And we don't need these, the conflicts arise from the one size fits all model being imposed on all of society.
I agree. So I hear you on the solution, and I mostly agree with you. I've got other points that I would fix in the education system. But how do we get from a situation where the Alexander family is being targeted and the fix is overhauling the education system, but that doesn't look likely in the next like Doug Ford's not going to he's removing the trustees, which is something, but I don't think that that's a wholesale fix. Is the only way to get to where we need to go to fix this problem, is the only way to get there winning an election unlikely? Or Is there another pathway?
But there,
Lobby Doug Ford?
winning an election is part of it. You need to elect MPPs to the Ontario Provincial Parliament. You need to elect MPPs who favor this significant change. Change is always hard, right? People, even if it's rotten, right? Like some people don't leave abusive relationships because it's the familiarity, and it's really scary to move out into the unknown. Anyway, putting all of that aside, you need a government that's going to overhaul education, and with the same level of funding, let it be far better spent on an authentic diversity of schools. And I don't know if we need the local school board that is there for a geographical area and is going to say every teacher that works in the school district has to celebrate and affirm LGBTQ issues, right? Because Matt and Nicole Alexander were fired not for any mistreatment of any student. Matt Alexander had been a teacher for over 20 years. He has had gay students and transgender students in his classrooms over the years. There's not a single complaint that he ever mistreated anybody, treated anybody unkindly or unfairly, right? That's where the rubber hits the road. I mean, if a teacher is actually mistreating students, treating students unfairly, disrespectfully, etc., then you address that issue. But here, they're fired because they don't want to expressly affirm and celebrate the LGBTQ narrative, the political narrative, as presented by the school board. So, in the long term, we just need to have governments that respect human rights. One of the human rights is the right of parents to provide moral and religious and academic education to their children, recognizing as well that it's still the parents' responsibility, it's still the parents' right. The school has a certain delegated authority, but they don't have ultimate. The kids don't belong to the state, unless Mussolini, Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Mao Zedong. If you're one of those people, you believe that the government actually owns the kids. But if you're on the side of human rights in the free society, you believe that parents have the responsibility and the right to guide and direct their children's education. Governments need to respect that by providing real choices to parents.
I agree. It's unfortunate though, because the government doesn't seem to respect the basic rights of anybody. You know what I mean? Like if you look at our charter, I feel like the charter has been basically thrown out with, freedom of expression. The censorship online is absolutely crazy. And I mean, like, online is the public sphere, is the public square right now. And so if they say, well, you can say anything you want, standing in your backyard, that's not the same as being able to post on Facebook the thing you want, or, and the scary thing is, as you're talking about the Alexander family, like, there have been situations they're fired for not affirming LGBT exactly the way their board wants them to. There have been other teachers and nurses and other people fired just for things they've said online. Just, things like, that man can't be a woman, right? Or, here's something that's happening in my industry or whatever it is, no shade to my employer or anything like that. And boom, they're fired the next day. And I don't know. It seems like we're in a battle, and half of the people who are on the other side, the losing side at this point in time, are not engaged at all. Like, the school board is tactically taking ground, right? Methodically, well thought out in a plan, and the parents who are opposing them are scattered and just trying to not get hit by the
it's
incoming.
It's hard. It's an uphill fight. I agree. But, this is part of reaping the harvest of poor choices made 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, where parents abdicated their responsibility. This has been a longstanding problem. Sadly, there are a lot of parents that they're not directly involved with their own kids. That their kid's in grade 4 and the kid can't read, and the parent doesn't know about it because they're just so detached, right? That's a big problem.
Yeah.
But this has been facilitated by this kind of attitude shift where parents, maybe 100 years ago, it's like, well, ultimately I'm responsible for teaching my kids to read and write. The school is looking after the school's kind of doing this, but I'm still responsible, right? It's analogous to, it's not the same thing. Ultimately, I'm responsible for making sure that my car is running fine without a problem. Now, so I hire a mechanic and he does stuff and he does an oil change and he fixes my car, but I'm still responsible.
Right.
But I think a lot of parents have lost that sense of responsibility. It's like, I am responsible for making sure that, academically my kid can read and write, and spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, they're growing up to be virtuous citizens. They have good manners, they're kind, they are altruistic, etc. Right?
Yep.
So that's what we need to get back. If parents have get back to having that sense of, I am responsible for my own kids, then you're going to see some change. But that's the underlying cultural problem.
I agree. I worked in children's mental health for 15 years. I worked in children's mental health from the 2001 to 2015-ish. And the amount of parents who think that their kids aren't their responsibility is tragic. Oh. It's very, very tragic. And the kids, so like in your own life, in my life, I have goals and things, and sometimes I don't know how to achieve my goals. Sometimes they're lofty. They're big goals that are difficult to achieve with multiple complex things that I'd have to, I want to put on a concert, so I have to learn an instrument and then learn the music for the concert and so on. It's complicated, right? And so if I can't orchestrate that or guide myself through that, it would be very difficult to guide my child through that. And a lot of people are overwhelmed, I think, by the complexities of life, and they can't even manage themselves. And so the idea of them having to be responsible for another person, they think to themselves, I had to figure it out, and I'm okay. Maybe I haven't succeeded in my piano concert that I'm trying, but I'm okay. So my kid will be okay too. I absolve myself of my responsibility because I'm okay, and my kid will probably be fine too. And so like there's this idea that it's just going to be fine and sort itself out. Whereas it may be fine, but like it may be fine in the same way if you don't plan to like take a meal out camping, and then you get camping and you're like, oh shit, I don't have any food, right? Like it's fine. You're not going to die maybe, but it's not going to be ideal. You're not going to have a full belly when you're going to sleep. Like there's a problem here, and you're setting yourself up for it. And a lot of people don't realize this. And then the complicating school factor, where the schools are just filling the kids' heads with nonsense, it exacerbates it even more. And the parents don't understand. But I think there's a nugget of truth in there, in that they don't feel responsible. They're not responsible. They've absolved themselves of that responsibility. And it's having a cultural and societal toll. And that's awful. Awful. I agree with you. We're at 40 minutes, and this has been a wonderful conversation. Is there anything you want to tell my audience, wrap up with just at the end?
Totally different topic. Justice Center has just released a report on the rising death rates in Canada. The report is on our website, www.jccf.ca. It's all based on Stats Canada data, so it's going to be interesting to see. It undermines the government's narrative. Just a few rapid-fire kind of bullets from the report. According to Statistics Canada, the number of people who died of COVID went up after everybody got injected. So Stats Canada says that in 2020, we had 16,000 COVID deaths, 16,000 COVID deaths in 2020. After everybody gets injected, in 2022, the number goes up, and we have 20,000 COVID deaths after Canadians have had, 2 shots, and in many cases a booster. Another point, drug overdose deaths are up 55% after lockdowns were imposed. And they have stayed high, sadly. 55% increase in drug overdose deaths. A 15% rise in deaths in children ages 1 to 14. After lockdowns and vaccine passports, you got the 15% increase. These are not COVID deaths.
Yeah, no.
The drug overdose deaths are not COVID deaths. We have a 30% increase in deaths after lockdowns and vaccine passports. We have a 30% increase in deaths among Canadians under the age of 45.
Wow.
And according to Statistics Canada, only 1% of these deaths are COVID deaths.
Wow.
Alcohol-induced deaths up by 18% after lockdowns, vaccine passports. So those are some of the points, and I would challenge anybody who disagrees with us. I say roll up your sleeves and spend 20, 40, 60 hours going through Stats Canada data. And if you think our report is somehow misrepresenting what Stats Canada is saying, by all means, produce your own report. Mm-hmm. Tell me, show me where we're wrong. So this report, it's Statistics Canada itself that undermines the federal government, the government, provincial, federal. Mm-hmm. It undermines the whole COVID lockdown vaccine narrative of the government.
Yeah.
Stats Canada data tells us that COVID was not the unusually deadly killer that media were making it out to be on a daily basis and an hourly basis. Stats Canada data shows that many Canadians have been killed because of lockdowns and vaccine passports. And Statistics Canada data surely calls into question this whole propaganda point that the vaccine is safe and effective. Mm-hmm. Well, when you look at the Stats Canada data, you really have to question that claim.
Well, and
so you check it out on our website, Justice Center Constitutional Freedoms, jccf.ca, under reports, and you can read the report there.
Yeah. Well, just your first two numbers, the fact that after the vaccine rollout and everybody had been jabbed, the numbers went up. That's how can they cling to their narrative? And it is just a narrative.
How is the vaccine effective if all these Canadians are getting immunized?
Yep.
Gene therapy. And then everybody's been injected, and this was like amongst the seniors over the age of 70, the vaccination rates were 95%, or they were much higher.
Yep.
And so then everybody gets injected, and more people die of COVID than pre-vaccine.
Yeah, terrible. Yeah, the whole thing is crazy. And from all of the things that we've been talking about today, it feels like and I know that freedom of ideas and freedom of speech is central. And I love to debate and talk about things in a way that is mutually beneficial. Like, I think X, you think Y, let's talk about that and get to the end of it. And everything seems upside down. There doesn't seem to be a situation where there's a pathway to reconciliation, to finding common ground and building on that. It doesn't seem like the left wants the right dead and buried, and the right doesn't recognize the danger, it seems. And I don't know what to do about that. And it seems like we're losing battles. If the battlefield was one big battlefield, we're losing that battle. But if the battlefield was many small battlefields, we are also losing the small battles. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't seem to be.
But you and I and other people are making a difference just by getting out there and fighting. Well, we are. You look at Catherine Cronus, who had the courage to publicly object to a land acknowledgement being imposed on a school board meeting or a parent council meeting.
Yep.
She objected, and she got in trouble for it.
Mm-hmm.
The Justice Center provided lawyers. The school board, they backed down. They backed away because we fought back.
Yep.
In my book, Corrupted by Fear, there's a whole chapter on all the victories that were won by citizens, or not even all, it's just some of them, a sampling, right? So the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. So as long as good people are active, things will turn around. I'm convinced.
Perfect. Well, what a good way to end it. Thank you for your optimism, and thank you for your time, sir. Hang out. We'll chat in the green room before I let you go. And for everybody else, we can say goodbye. Thanks for watching, everybody. And we will catch you next time.